Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa ummatihi ajmain. Alright, so first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Khairin with my ID number 204001404. And in this session of the day, I would like to explain about some types of question. And so without further ado, let's just dive right into it. To differentiate no questions from declarative sentences, it is essential to know what their functions are. Declarative sentences in function are used to convey information consistently. The most common structure used is subject, verb, object. For example, Maryam reads a book. Maryam serves as the subject, reads as the verb, and the book is the object. However, declarative sentences have several patterns such as subject plus verb for transitive verbs. For example, Ibrahim sleeps. In short, declarative sentences have the normal rules where subjects are placed in the beginning of a sentence and then followed by verbs. We can also add complements if needed and end it with a period. Yes, no questions, on the other hand, are used to ask for short information. Usually, the answer only requires yes or no. Different from declarative sentences, yes, no questions have their own rule, where inversion in the information is required. For example, auxiliary plus subject plus verb. There are several types of auxiliary that can be used to form yes/no questions, and the answer of the questions will depend on the auxiliary verbs used. The first one is to be or am is always where plus subject plus complement, or what we call the normal sentence. This type is used when there is no lexical verbs in the sentence. For example, when we want to invert the sentence Azra is a student into yes/no question, we may put the auxiliary is in the beginning of the sentence, becoming is Azra a student? The second is to do or do dash did plus subject plus base verb and also object, or what we call the verbal sentence. This type is used when there is a lexical verb in a sentence. For example, I want to invert the sentence Naila walks into yes/no question. We might add does in the beginning of the sentence as Naila works as the third singular person, and the word works must be changed to the base form, and as a result, the sentence form is does Naila walk? The third is to have or have has had plus subject plus past participle and also plus object if needed. This type is used when a sentence shows perfect aspect or tense. For example, when we want to invert the sentence you have eaten into yes/no question, we might put the auxiliary have in the beginning of the sentence, becoming have you eaten? And the last one is modal such as can, should, may, and etc. The subject plus base verb and subject if needed. This type is used when a sentence simply contains a modal. For example, when we want to invert the sentence, we can leave now into yes/no questions. We may put the modal can in the beginning of the sentence, becoming can we leave now? In conclusion, structurally, declarative sentences follow the normal patterns of general statements such as subject for object to give information, while yes/no questions have inversion process where declarative sentence is preceded by auxiliaries. Yes/no questions in English rely on a pattern where something must stand in front of the subject to signal that the sentence is interrogative. When a clause already has an auxiliary such as is, have, or modal verbs like can, should, would, that verb can simply move to the front. However, clauses with ordinary lexical verbs do not have an auxiliary available, so it cannot move or carry tense on their own. If the first lexical verb to move, as in like you meatballs, the tense marking would disappear because English marks tense on auxiliary verbs, not on main verbs when they are displaced. This meant that when the verb is moved, the clause is left without a clear indication of tense, and the sentence can no longer form a grammatical question. To prevent this loss of tense and to mention the required question structure, English introduces the auxiliary do as a support element. The addition of do carries the tense on its own, while the main verb remains in its base form, producing a stable and recognizable pattern such as do you like meatballs? In this way, the support allows English to form yes/no questions in clauses that would otherwise lack the necessary auxiliary to signal both tense and interrogative verbs. WH questions are questions used to request specific information introduced by WH words such as what, who, where, when, and why, and how. The structure must signal both interrogative force and the type of detail being asked for. The typical order for WH questions is WH word plus auxiliary plus subject plus main verb. This pattern follows the English requirement that questions place an auxiliary before the subject, while also positioning the WH element at the front to specify what information is being requested. For example, where will they meet? The verb where to introduce the question, will as the auxiliary, they as the subject, and meet as the main verb. This differs from yes/no questions, which follow the simpler pattern, auxiliary plus subject plus main verb, because they only seek confirmation. For instance, will they meet? The information is the same, but the WH question is unnecessary. WH questions usually require an auxiliary because English marks question by placing the auxiliary before the subject. However, there is a special case where a WH question does not need an auxiliary, which occurs when the WH word functions as the subject of the clause. In this structure, the WH word not only introduces the question but also occupies the subject position, so there is no separate element to invert with an auxiliary. Inversion only occurs when there is a distinct subject following the auxiliary. When the WH word is the subject, inversion cannot happen and an auxiliary is unnecessary. As a result, the sentence keeps the normal subject plus verb order. For example, who broke the glass, where who acts as the subject and broke remains in its usual position. In this case, the absence of an auxiliary is due to the syntactic role of the WH word, not the type of main verb. Indirect questions differ from direct questions mainly in word order. In direct questions, subject auxiliary inversion is required. For example, where is she going? Places the auxiliary verb piece before the subject she, signaling that the sentence is a question. In indirect questions, however, the question is embedded within a larger clause, and the word order turns to the standard subject verb order. For instance, can you tell me where she's going? Keep she before is following normal declarative structure. This difference shows that inversion is a feature unique to direct questions and is not used when the question is reported or embedded. Indirect questions do not end with the question mark because they're part of a larger statement, not standalone questions. Phrases like I wonder or can you tell me introduce the embedded question and make it a statement. For example, I wonder what time for the meeting starts. Here, the embedded clause what time the meeting starts is treated as part of the declarative sentence, so it's used period. Modal verbs act as the main auxiliary in questions, replacing the need for other auxiliaries. In yes/no questions, the modal comes before the subject, as in, can you help me? This follows the standard auxiliary subject inversion pattern. In WH questions, the modal appears immediately after the WH word. For example, how can you solve this problem? The modal signals both the tense and the mood of the question, and no additional auxiliary is needed. In indirect questions, modals retain normal order. Would you tell me how I can solve this problem? Here, the modal appears after the subject, reflecting the embedded structure rather than a direct question. Inversion is the main cue that marks a sentence as interrogative by putting an auxiliary or modal before the subject, as in, are you coming? The listener knows it is a question. Rising intonation at the end of the sentence reinforces the questions in speech. Together, inversion and intonation help distinguish questions from statements even before the full sentence is processed. If learners misunderstand rules like subject, auxiliary, inversion, or do support, they may produce unclear sentences such as like you meatballs instead of do you like meatballs. This can lead to miscommunication in both spoken and written English. Teachers can help by clearly explaining the patterns of auxiliary placement, providing repeated practice with different verb types, and using exercises that show how lexical verbs, modals, and auxiliaries function in questions. Visual aids, sentence transformations, and guided drills can reinforce proper structures and improve learners' confidence. Direct question with inversion often sound more abrupt. For example, where is the office? While indirect questions like, can you tell me where the office is? Embed the request in a statement, making it more polite and considerate. These syntactic choices allow speakers to manage social interactions, show respect, and navigate hierarchical or power-sensitive contexts. In English, grammar is not only about correctness, but also about silent social awareness and maintaining effective communication. That will be all from me for today. Thank you very much for watching, and please feel free to give me your critics. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.